Welcome to the Robert Hunt Financial Market Update. It's your host, Robert Hunt, where I look at the week's financial news that can be a bit confusing, misleading, and take us off course enough to make it actionable, understandable, and clear. What a week. What a show. I've only got the dog with me this week. Apologies if you were expecting my usual cast of characters, but truancy laws, they are what they are. We've got a great lineup. We're going to be looking first at an incredible piece of news for the long-term investor. Vanguard's average fee cut is now just 0.07% after biggest ever cut. So, wow. Vanguard coming in with a big cut. I'll explain why that matters and how they do it. I then have one of our favorites, Mr. Peter Mallouk, and we're going to talk about dollar cost averaging versus lump sum investing. This has been coming up more and more in my interactions with clients when the market is high and making new highs. This comes up a lot. And then we talk about something that everyone's probably heard of, the 401k and the tipping point that is occurring for American savers. We're going to talk about behavioral finance, what we can learn from some of the adoption rates that they've seen in these 401k programs, and what you can do to mimic that for your own benefit. At the top, this is a Bloomberg News article. I got it from Advisor Hub, so it's sadly behind a paywall, but I'll put it in the show notes as always. Headline: Vanguard's average fee is now just 0.07% after biggest ever cut. Now, even when I say that, and I've been doing this long enough to know there are things that make sense to you, listener and client, and there are things that do not make sense to you. And what I just said usually does not make sense. So when I tell people, oh, this is great, you're going to love this, Vanguard's average fee is now just 0.07%. For most humans, that means nothing. I just told you nothing. Now, if I told you this, would you be excited? Hey, they are selling gasoline for $1 a gallon at gas station XYZ. You would immediately know, well, that's incredible. That's incredible. That is low cost. How do they do that? Similarly, because egg prices are in the news, if I told you, hey, they're selling a dozen eggs for $1. For those of you who shop at all for eggs, you know that's sky high. It would be obviously good news. But when I talk in percentages, which is the way financial products are priced in America, it's difficult for us to make sense. Is this good? Is this bad? So I want to try and land the plane to help you see this is really, really good. And we had talked last week on the corner about how some of these fees are actually zero, but the Securities and Exchange Commission requires that Vanguard list the upfront fees without the securities lending income remitted back to the fund level. But Vanguard has $10 trillion under management. That's with a T. It's 0.07% compares with 0.44% for the rest of the industry. So again, that may not mean a lot. If you do it as a multiple, oh, that's almost 7 times more expensive. Well, now that matters. If you had gasoline for $21 a gallon or $3 a gallon, that 7 times is a big multiple. Well, that's the difference that is happening in average fees across the industry. And to give it perspective, if you have $100 in a fund and they charge 1%, which is a common expense ratio, that percentage, that's $1 a year. Well, that doesn't sound like a lot to you. Maybe not. If you have more and more money in that fund, it becomes more and more expensive. And what we've learned through the beautiful Spiva report is that low cost wins. Over the long haul, you've got like a 3% chance over a 20-year period of beating the index. And fees are the big root cause of that. So Vanguard has been huge for the individual investor. This article explains in many ways how the industry has tried to find some sort of way to combat Vanguard. The article mentions this. Gimmicks have flamed out, though. The people offered free, zero-fee product funds. Fidelity still has those. They call them zero funds. So it costs you 0.0%. But be prepared to get cross-sold. It's kind of the free buffet in the casino. Buckle up. What Vanguard does and what's unique about their structure is Vanguard doesn't have shareholders in the traditional sense. So Charles Schwab has publicly traded shares. Fidelity is owned by the Johnson family, but those are shareholders. BlackRock, again, has shareholders to answer to. Vanguard is owned by the actual mutual funds that it administers. Huh? What? So believe it or else, those funds are the ones that are dictating, hey, we want lower fees and we think we can do it sustainably. Here's our desire, and they lower the fees because the Vanguard is controlled by and large by these funds. So you're getting, it's a mutual fund company. I analogize it with a credit union. It's run for the benefit of the membership. A joke I'll use is it's the world's largest family office. So if you think a family office is cool, family office is typically a place where pools of money exist for the benefit of a family, and it's not run for profit, it's run for the benefit of the family. If you want to be a part of the largest family office in the world, with $10 trillion in assets, just invest in a Vanguard ETF or through the Vanguard brokerage platform. I had a fun talk with Vanguard. I think it was last week, and I reminded them, I said, Vanguard, now you guys are starting to cross-sell certain products that Mr. Jack Bogle wouldn't like, and they didn't have a whole lot to say about that, but you still have to be careful around Vanguard. Unfortunately, this side of the Garden of Eden, they have products that are not helpful, and they are pushing private equity style investments and higher price funds for whatever reason. But what Vanguard's doing, Vanguard brought in $305 billion in 2024, and so the more they have under management, the lower they can cut prices. So this will save $350 million to investors, to Vanguard investors through this recent fee reduction. So that's huge. What's huge for the whole industry is this benefits everybody. They call this the Vanguard effect. So when Vanguard lowers their fees, it puts Schwab, Fidelity, BlackRock, all of those on notice, and they have to say, we have to match this, or at least show that we're seeking to match it. Otherwise, we're going to have a huge rush of assets over into Vanguard. So this benefits everyone, but I like Vanguard the most. If you're looking for an ETF, those exchange trade funds, or if you're looking to park money at a brokerage, I think Vanguard is the best because of the permanence there. Like when you consider the structure of the firm, you know that even if for a season, maybe I think it was recently Robinhood had some sort of a promotion they were doing with cash rates plus a 3% back credit card. And I was walking through with a client. And I said, yeah, you know what? You're right. Robinhood right now for these gold members, they actually, the math says, offer a better situation for the investor. I said, is it permanent? Like, will there be permanence? I doubt it. And the client agreed. They said, yeah, it's probably a teaser deal. They're probably just trying to get people in the door, and then they'll cut the benefits and just see who stays. That's been my experience. It's better to go with a firm that structurally has an advantage, like Vanguard, not owned by traditional shareholders, owned by the very funds themselves. So take heart, investor. You live in the greatest time to invest that has ever existed in the history of humanity. I'll say that again. There has never been a better time to be an investor in the history of humanity than now. Now, you might say, well, what about the price to earnings multiples? I could have bought in 1932. You wouldn't have. No one had money in 1932. You're in 2025. Man cannot choose what time to live in. He can only do with the time given him. So be grateful. What an incredible, incredible time to invest. And thanks to Vanguard, thanks to Jack Bogle, thanks to that senior thesis he had at Princeton to bring this about. And then Mr. Peter Mallouk, we're going to talk dollar cost averaging. Listener, dollar cost averaging is when, instead of putting all your money in the market in one click of the button, you elect to spread that out over a number of months, sometimes 12 months, sometimes 24 months, sometimes you make up your own cadence, your own schedule, your own metronome of how you'll invest. But what you'll do is you say, I've got $100,000 and I don't want to put it all to work now. I'll just do, $8,000 a month or $10,000 a month, and I'll do that for 10 or 12 months. And so what that'll do for me is ensure that I don't pick the top or get stuck putting all my money in the year 2000 or in the year 1929 or 28, or I don't put all my money in 2007. All these years I gave you were the peak of the market at the time. And so in the investor's mind, hey, if I dollar cost average, if I spread out those investments, you know what? That'll give me a better shot at returns. Well, what does the data say? This is Mr. Peter Maluk, one of our favorites. He asked the question, what are the historical odds that dollar cost averaging into stocks over 12 months will beat a lump sum investment? Lump sum meaning, hey, you just put it all in the market in one click. The odds that dollar cost investing beats is only 32%. That's over 12 months. Over 36 months, it's only 26%. What's going on there? Why do you think that is? Well, if the market generally moves up, and it does, you're really just staying in cash longer, and therefore you have something called cash drag, and you're just underperforming. It's better if you can to put all the money in. I'd add one more caveat to this, that what Maluk is assuming is that you actually stick with your dollar cost averaging plan. Most people don't. So this will usually spook clients, but I encourage them to do it. They'll usually ask me, particularly right now, as you look at the stock market chart and you think to yourself, uh-oh, this thing is high and making all-time highs. I don't want to be a fool. Maybe I'll just dollar cost average. What I usually tell people is do a lump sum. And that usually shocks them. They usually think that's less conservative. I don't think so. And I do it mainly for behavioral reasons. You know what's really hard to do is to stick with the dollar cost averaging plan when the news cycle or the market is incredibly volatile. What I've seen happen with those plans, okay, great, I'll do it over a year, I promise. Okay, great, you'll do it. I believe you. And I usually bless those plans. Great, do it. Did we stick with it? Well, I not quite. There was something come up, or sometimes it's, I decided to buy a car, or there was a boat I really liked, or there was a special hunting trip, or there are other things that get in the way, or just I got spooked. I got, the market dropped 10%, and I wanted to let the dust settle before I kept going. Well, that's the whole point of dollar cost averaging. The whole point is that you invest through the down cycle. So I affirm what Mr. Maluk is saying, and I use this in my own practice. Keep it simple. Occam's razor, which is the simplest solution is the best. Take the joystick out of your hands. If anytime you can take the joystick out of your hands as an investor, it'll benefit you, because we're just not that great. I'm not that great at kind of market timing and instincts and sticking with plans, and it's better just to leave it be. Leave it be. No reason to get fancy. And then in close, final article, Wall Street Journal and Tergeson headline, the 401k has reached a tipping point in its takeover of American retirement. Half of private sector workers are now saving these plans decades after they replaced traditional pensions. Now, I'll editorialize just a bit to say, I think we think too highly of 401ks in a sense, and we think too low of 401ks in a sense. I think we think too highly of 401ks via their tax benefits. Now, people just, Robert, you get to deduct your taxes in the year in which you contribute. How great is this? Of course, I think that's great, whatever. But did you know, listener, that money, when it comes out of a traditional, not a Roth, a traditional 401k, it's coming out as ordinary income. Now, that may be that in the future, once you're out of work, you're in a lower tax bracket, but you don't know that. You believe it or else, you could be in a high tax bracket just because the government at the time decides you're in a high tax bracket, and it's not quite the deal you thought it was. And by the way, the government's going to dictate when you get that money, those RMDs, required minimum distributions. At some point, they're going to say, all right, here you go. Time for you to get your money coming out at ordinary rate. So in that sense, I think we think too highly, that the tax benefits we think too highly of. I think we think too low of the 401k, and that it's excellent behaviorally, and you get company matching sometimes. So that quote unquote free money from an employer, hey, we'll match your dollar for dollar up to 3% or whatever they do. That is incredible. And then behaviorally, the idea that money, it's kind of like a mortgage, and that it just automatically comes out of your account. In that sense, I think the 401k is underestimated and is an incredible tool. And anybody who will listen, I'll say sign up for it. So that's my editorializing. But this article goes on to explain that 70% of private sector employees in the U.S. now have access to a 401k style plan. A decade earlier, it was only 60%, and only 43% contributed. So this has been good. We're now at about 50% participation by private sector workers in a 401k plan. Again, really good. I'd also add if most Americans are not sophisticated financially or have personal finance knowledge, the 401k is a great way just to force, as a forcing function, to just jump in the pool, jump in the deep end. Your employer will handle it for you. Otherwise, I just don't think you'd do it. The article explains some excellent new providers that are coming in for small employers: Human Interest, Principal, and Guideline. Guideline I'm familiar with. They take a more technology-focused approach to lower your cost, and Guideline actually has good investment options. A lot of Vanguard low-cost funds that makes it hard to mess up. Whereas, I'm telling you, listener, I audited I guess this was a 403B plan. Tough. A lot of high expense products, not the 0.07, more like 0.80s and 1.08s and 0.66 and 0.72. Like, that's the price. And you know, listener, that 0.07 is more reasonable. That's a good thing to kind of get in your mind. So it's a great thing these technology-focused firms are jumping in the fray. This I thought was interesting. More Americans are automatically getting swept into 401k plans. So a lot of plans created since the end of 2022 they must automatically enroll workers by depositing 3 to 10% of their pay in an account. And this is a law that was intended to expand 401k participation. Once people are auto-enrolled in a plan, it shows few drop out. Yeah. So 94% of eligible participants are saving in 401k style plans Vanguard administers that auto-enroll versus 67% in plans that require employees to sign up on their own. I'll read that again. 94% of eligible participants are saving in the 401k style plan Vanguard administers that auto-enroll. So if you join a firm and your firm says, hey, here's the deal, here's your package, glad you're here, we auto-enrolled you, 94%. If it requires something of you, only 67%. If the employee requires something, the employer actually has to do something. Isn't that an incredible statistic that this could be the decision by which you're able to retire or not? And it's just the whim of what you are doing that weekend. So I like the auto-enroll. I know a lot of the big brother people might say, oh, this is control. The government shouldn't control us. I think this is one of the few areas where I kind of like it. It just, as humans are behaviorally, we're just not that great at knowing what to do with investing, knowing the main thing. And what is the main thing? To keep those costs low, that investing simple, and that time horizon long, because that's going to give you the best shot on your investing journey. Until next week.